I sit here not in my individual capacity, but on behalf of a number of defenders from across the globe who were with us yesterday, who are not with us today, who are in incarceration not only in my own country, India, but as in other prisons across the globe, as well as their families. And it is on their behalf that I would present this as a defender from India representing the Human Rights Defenders Alert India. I would first like to pay my tribute to our friend from Honduras for the award they have been receiving, and we get inspired from your families and your communities who have been leading this struggle. I come from a country which, according to Civicus Monitor, comes under their category of being repressed. And therefore, I also come from a country where, after Vienna, the National Plan of Action on Human Rights is yet to be passed, leave alone on business and human rights. Therefore, access to justice for human rights defenders is something which is quite serious. Who are these human rights defenders? They are not only the people on the ground, from the communities, and I would like to name the communities: the indigenous people of India, the Adivasis, the Dalit communities, largely the Muslim communities. There are also academicians who fall into this category, people who have been teaching in law schools, lawyers who have been fighting for them in the highest court of the country, in the Supreme Court, and a variety of human rights defenders from across, including journalists who have had the guts to write the truth and, as a result, pay the cost. Where are they located? Across the country. What is used against them is the Indian Penal Code is used, the Criminal Procedure Code is used, the Unlawful Assembly Act, the UAPA is used, preventive detention laws are used, slap suits are used, and all this takes place in the world's largest democracy, termed as the mother of democracy by our own country. We are, as defenders, every day by administrators, we are called anti-nationals, we are called urban Naxals, we are called terrorists, we are called secessionists, we are called instruments and agents of the Western world, which means of the United Nations. We are not ashamed. I have a bank account closed for 11 long years. I have a criminal case against me by the Central Bureau of Investigation for the past 2 years, only because we have determined to continue our work with human rights defenders across. And if we access justice, we will continue to access justice. And if we are targeted, we will continue to work with the United Nations, with the treaty bodies here, with the special rapporteurs here, with the UPR. For us, the UPR is not Geneva. For us, the UPR is in our communities. Our communities watch the UPR. Nobody else has done this. 4,000 communities across the country watching the UPR being translated in their own language simultaneously. That is human rights for us. Any amount of repression to human rights defenders cannot stop us. They can intimidate us, they can assault us, they can have false charges against us, they can kill us with institutional murders. We've lost Father Stan Swami, a Jesuit priest, in what we call is an institutional murder. They can use the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act against us and ensure we don't have resources, but we have people in solidarity. We have communities in solidarity. We have embassies in solidarity, and we have the UN in solidarity, and all of you in solidarity. That is our access to justice. Business and human rights cannot be fought only in the courts of law, only through regulations. They have to be fought by human rights defenders willing to pay the price in our respective streets. Despite the fact that freedom of association and assembly will be curtailed, the freedom to express dissent and protest will be curtailed, and our freedom to express our opinion will be curtailed wherever we choose to protest. And that is the strength. Our rights will be ensured on the streets of our respective countries, in our respective forests, to protect our land. We might get victories in courts, as we got in India, in the state of Orissa, the Supreme Court got back the land from Poxo, one of the biggest companies. But today it is back into another, and the struggle continues there. I come from a state where another huge company called Vedanta from the UK has been challenged, and there are 16 lives lost, over 200 people killed, 200 people hurt very badly in the year 2018. Impunity continues till today. Not even a single person has been prosecuted. And the National Human Rights Commission, which is the closest institution, no other country in the world has national human rights institutions like we have. We have 9 national human rights institutions and over 160 state human rights institutions, but they choose to remain silent when it comes to activists who really matter. Therefore, access to justice is something on the ground that we have to fight. We will continue our fight despite the repression that we have to face. This would be my initial remarks. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. My final comment before going into the question would be that despite the very difficult circumstances that we have been facing in our respective countries, the sign of hope is on this panel. You have embassies here who have been echoed also from the floor. You have business here who have also been supportive. And this alliance is a remarkable alliance working with the UN Working Group and other instruments of the United Nations. And that is solidarity. That is what is our sign of hope despite the difficult circumstances each one of us are. Now, coming very specifically to a question that was posed from the floor on national human rights institutions. I would say with great respect to the Chair, national human rights institutions are our first protection, domestic protection. And they are the people who should be there, who come at the protection of defenders who are most vulnerable, drawn from vulnerable communities, indigenous communities, Dalit communities, minorities, especially the Muslim minorities in India. It is they who need to come, but it is they who totally fail. Who corrects them? The Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions, which is a very respectable body, a body which has got a history of respect, led by very knowledgeable people who also guide civil society after their retirement from national human rights institutions. It is the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions and their subcommittee on accreditation, which accreditates these national human rights commissions to be able to do the work they do and come into the United Nations and its entire work. It is the work of the subcommittee on accreditation to ensure that the national human rights commissions of our respective countries who are not living up to Paris principles, who are not Paris principles compliant, who are not standing on the side of defenders vis-a-vis corporate interests, this is precisely what they should do. And my appeal very specifically is, my own country's National Human Rights Commission has been deferred last year, coming up for accreditation and review this year. Can the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights put itself directly before the members of the subcommittee on accreditation and address them? Can the special rapporteurs who are taking up our cases and facing total silence from my own state be able to now stand on our side and demonstrate that they will address the subcommittee on accreditation? There are ways. The will is not only on civil society. The will and the duty is on UN country teams to speak, on UN mechanisms to speak, and for others in the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the desk officers to speak. If you do not speak, our national human rights commissions will become ornamental bodies as they have been turning out to be. Imagine a country with 170 such institutions. Not one of them in the national level has been invited by the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions to come to the United Nations. And if that happened, you would see that there would be a lot that can be done. And to my friend from Uganda who raised the question of human rights defenders, some of the best activists in our human rights defenders platform are persons with disabilities who lead us by their example and always make us conscious that we usually are extremely bad in being sensitive to access to defenders. And the last is to appeal to business, who's here, that your efforts at supporting constitutional rights, human rights education is something that business should do to be able to promote the protection of human rights to younger generations across the globe. National human rights institutions have to be protected to ensure that they live up, but business has to support us also to ensure that human rights education is taken forward. Thank you.